Tonight on Q2, catching fire on social media.
He just jumped out and ran right straight at me.
An altercation involving a protester leads to allegations of a hate crime. But we find out what really happened.
You know, why are you running in my brother's truck? Why are you calling him Nazi? What, you know, what's going on? And I tried to square up with him.
Plus, new details coming to light in the possible poisoning of a Cody woman on New Year's Eve. We'll have the latest as the investigation is now complete. The MTN 430 News starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday. I'm Andrea Lutz. Tonight, new details surrounding an altercation during a weekend protest that's garnered a lot of attention on social media, some even calling it a hate crime. While police say it's not a hate crime, the community is coming together to stand behind a man protesting with an upside-down American flag. We'll tell you why that's attracted some attention. Our Haley Monaco has more on the case.
This is where the incident happened. The protester says two vehicles stopped along 27th Street, and a man in the passenger seat of the second vehicle got out and came towards him.
I think we have a problem, and I don't think we want to admit it.
Tuesday marked the 11th day Jonathan, who asked to just be referred to by his first name, is protesting in downtown Billings, holding an upside-down American flag and a Not in Our Town sign.
They tried to kill me in the street for my First Amendment rights.
But on Saturday, he says a man came at him with a knife.
I had pepper spray in my pocket, but I couldn't get it out fast enough. So I was just holding the flagpole at an angle so that I could keep him back from me. And he kept coming at me, and he reached behind himself and pulled up a knife. So I just reacted and jabbed him straight in the chest with the end of this 1-inch flagpole.
But the man who approached Jonathan has a different story.
The gentleman with the sign and the flag started screaming and approaching my brother's truck in a hostile manner. My sister, his wife, is on that side of the truck. I will not allow an individual to aggressively approach a female. So I jumped out to confront him.
Michael, who asked to not be shown on camera and was just visiting Billings, says Jonathan called his brother a Nazi.
You know, why are you running in my brother's truck? Why are you calling him Nazi? What, you know, what's going on? And I tried to square up with him. He hit me with a flagpole, and then we left. I always carry a knife.
Did you pull it out and present it?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
I talked with the PD about that. That's between me and them.
Sergeant Jeffrey Stovall with the Billings Police Department says a call came in about a verbal disturbance, and once investigating, heard different stories.
We don't have any injuries to go that someone was actually assaulted in that way. However, that's the conflicting reports that we have at this point. Basically, we had some conflicting statements as to who the aggressors may have been, what weapons were involved.
Stovall says they did not find any indication that Michael or his brother are white supremacists.
Until we have a factual reason to accuse someone of being something, we've got to be very careful about doing that. Just because there are laws that protect people from being, libeled and slandered and stuff like that.
No charges have been filed in this case, and police say it does not meet the criteria of a hate crime.
So at this point, the information has been forwarded over to the county attorney's office for them to review.
In Billings, Haley Monaco, MTN News.
Officials in Cody, Wyoming say a young mother of two was actually not poisoned with antifreeze. On New Year's Eve, Kaylee Klein was hospitalized for a week in Billings after suffering seizures and signs of alcohol poisoning after a night out. Klein previously told us a nurse treating her condition believes she was poisoned with antifreeze. However, after a Park County prosecuting attorney and medical examiner looked into the case, they say there's no official diagnosis to support that claim. Investigators also reviewed some camera footage from inside the bar that night. They say they don't see any evidence of someone spiking her beverage. However, Klein's family still disagrees, even naming a possible suspect. Officials believe instead the likely cause is Wellbutrin, which is an antidepressant.
Temperatures, a bit of a contrast today where we have some 40s over in western Montana, 30s through the midsection of the state, and check out readings real close to freezing anywhere along the High Line into central Montana this afternoon. Only 28 degrees reported from Glendive, 22 over in Williston, North Dakota. Compare that to where we were 24 hours ago. Feels a lot chillier. We're 6 degrees colder in Billings. Check out 15 to 20 degrees colder across the eastern plains.
Construction crews continue to make progress on the new Billings bypass to connect Lockwood with the Billings Heights. And now the Montana Department of Transportation says the last phase is almost complete on 5 Mile Road and the Yellowstone River Bridge. Meanwhile, the railroad overpass connecting the Yellowstone River Bridge to Johnson Lane interchange remains ongoing, and construction crews are now working on directional signs for the overpass, which will cross over the railroad tracks. No definite opening date for the road from Johnson Lane to the bridge has been set, but officials say the complete project is on schedule. A trade war is brewing between the U.S. and its largest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China. They're all looking at retaliatory taxes tonight with the United States after President Trump moved ahead with the latest wave of his tariffs. Scripps News Group's Joe St. George reports.
President Trump has issued new tariffs on goods imported from Canada, Mexico, and China, America's largest trading partners, forcing those countries to take actions of their own. Now the question is, how will all of this tariff talk impact your family's finances? The 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico and a 10% new tariff on goods from China took effect Tuesday morning. Company leaders at Target announced shortly thereafter that they will likely have to increase prices in the coming days on some goods, with Target's CEO telling CNBC that this time of year many of its stores rely on produce from Mexico, like strawberries and avocados. Alcohol sales are expected to see an impact as well. Over 80% of the beer imported to the United States comes from Mexico, according to the Beer Institute. This small business in Southern California was recently profiled by the Scripps News Group in San Diego. Employees there said Chinese tariffs will hit their shop especially hard.
With the tariffs being added to merchandise from China, it's going to affect us greatly, because that means we're going to have to raise our prices that a lot of customers aren't going to want to pay. And
the impact of tariffs, which is a tax on goods that cross an international border, isn't just expected to be felt on Main Street. Wall Street experienced a sell-off this week as a direct result of the tariffs, although economists have mixed opinions as to whether this is just a temporary negotiating tactic being used by President Trump or the beginning of a long-term policy shift. President Trump has instituted these tariffs as a means of getting Canada, China, and Mexico to do more to combat the rise of fentanyl deaths in the United States and to encourage companies to invest more in the U.S. The Trump administration has hinted even more tariffs could be on the horizon. On Tuesday, all three of those countries have enacted retaliatory tariffs or promise to do so soon. According to one study by the Peterson Institute of International Economics, if these tariffs stay in place over the course of the next year, it'll cost the typical American family around $1,200. Joe St. George, Scripps News Group, Washington.
A Ravalli County Republican has resigned his seat in the Montana House. Representative Ron Marshall quit the legislature yesterday afternoon, saying the corruption is more than I can stand. Lobbyists run this country. Marshall, who owns a vape shop in the Bitterroot Valley, filed a federal lawsuit last month claiming major tobacco companies violated an agreement with the state by lobbying for a bill he says would threaten businesses like his. However, a judge declined to issue an injunction. Marshall says his message to voters is he no longer wants to play the game in the legislature.
I'd tell them, would you stay here? That's the question I would ask. Would you stay here and deal, with, knowing that you don't have support from leadership, you don't have support from hardly anybody. I got two people up here that I trust right now. And, what would you do?
The Ravalli County Republican Party will need to select 3 possible appointees to fill Marshall's seat. We're just days away from a major deadline at the Montana legislature as lawmakers take action on hundreds of bills this week. MTN's Jonathan Anbarian has a closer look at where things stand ahead of Friday's transmittal deadline and what we can expect over the next 3 days.
Tuesday is the 45th day of the Montana legislative session, the halfway point. And in previous sessions, that would mean it was also the transmittal deadline, the date when most bills have to clear their first chamber or die. But this year, that deadline was pushed back 3 days to give more time to get through a rush of bills.
Listen, I'm glad that there's a transmittal deadline. Otherwise, legislators would just keep procrastinating into 2026, I'm sure. So I'm glad we have that deadline. It's always a rush like this at the end, but I think as far as the Senate sits, we haven't even done multiple boards yet, and I think we're set pretty good.
So far, more than 800 bills have been introduced in the Montana House, and more than 500 in the Senate. Any of those that don't spend money or affect state revenues have to clear one chamber by the 48th legislative day, which is Friday. House leaders expect to debate about 150 bills on the floor before transmittal, and Senate leaders say they'll likely hear around 100 bills Wednesday and Thursday. Legislative committees have been working overtime to determine which bills will make it to the floor for a full debate, many meeting for long hours last week, and some meeting on Saturday. On Monday and Tuesday, committees were scheduled to hear more than 120 bills.
Some of the bills had short hearings, but my view is if you bring a bill the last day, that's what you could expect. And a lot of those bills aren't ready, they're not well thought out, they're hastily drafted, and they deserve to die.
The House and Senate will both be spending all day Wednesday and Thursday on the floor, getting through as many bills as they can.
Most of the time, who's ever in the chair, so to speak, running the floor will be considerate and make sure that most people get the chance to comment. But there is, I would just say, some more urgency because we know the number of bills we have to get through. Yeah. And so in that sense, the hearings maybe aren't quite as robust as they might otherwise be on the floor.
If any bill's going to move on from the House or Senate floor, it has to pass both an initial vote and a final vote the following day. There's no debate on those final votes, so Friday's session is likely to wrap up much quicker than Wednesdays or Thursdays. In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
After several alarming aviation incidents, including a deadly mid-air collision in Washington, D.C., experts at a congressional hearing warned lawmakers that the FAA systems are outdated. Patrick Terpstra reports from Capitol Hill.
The Transportation Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives held a hearing about aviation safety that occurred after a string of high-profile and, frankly, very alarming incidents in the skies. That includes the fatal collision of a Army Black Hawk helicopter with an American Airlines flight. There were two family members inside the hearing who attended a moment of silence for the victims before lawmakers started asking industry stakeholders what is going on here. What they heard was a problem that goes back decades. Too few air traffic controllers, 11,000 of them employed right now, but they need to have 2,000 to 3,000 more. Also, the systems used by the FAA are very outdated. Listen to what exactly you might find inside an air traffic control tower.
Just like it's not acceptable for controllers and technicians to have to work with paper strips and floppy disks to operate the national airspace system in the United States. I showed these to some people in my office. They couldn't tell me what they were because they were under 30.
Lawmakers said that they want to make things better, but at the same time, there are very real budget challenges, especially with the potential of a government shutdown coming up. Also, the FAA has had the layoff of hundreds of employees by the Trump administration. Those layoffs not impacting air traffic controllers, but still something that lawmakers are very concerned about. Those job cuts are happening at a time that the system is still very much under strain. Patrick Terpstra, Scripps News Group, reporting from Capitol Hill.